Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience 2018 PGA Championship early betting odds look. We're not going to finalize any picks, but maybe we'll throw some out there that are a bit longer odds or ones that we think might go down in price, but the WGC Bridgestone and Barracuda have yet to reach their conclusion. So you might want to look at some of those numbers as well and see who's trending towards the right direction before you make any finalized picks. Before we get to the guests, I want to let everyone know, please give the episode a like. And if you do that, then you go down into the comments section, leave your DraftKings handle and your one favorite value bet so far that is up, and boom, you're in the running for some DK bucks. So give it a like, leave your DK handle and favorite value bet in the comment section, and hey, you're in the draw. I'll release the winners on Monday's show when we do finalize our picks with Jeff Feinberg. And on Tuesday's show, we're going to re-up with the DraftKings picks, talk about the weather draw, talk about the tee time draw, and a little bit of ownership. So my cheat sheet right now is available on DKPlaybook.com, and the whole video and podcast with Mike Leone and Ben Raza is already out if you want to go get a head start on the PGA Championship. And finally, if you want to track all this stuff, like, hey, who had the most strokes gained at the 2008 BMW Championship? Well, there's a solid solution for that. FantasyNational.com. You can get all the stats, customizable stat engine, all the DraftKings tools and betting tools that you need to compete and win some monies for the PGA Championship. So FantasyNational.com. Go become a member today because golf season only has 7 events left, and you want to cash in and build that bankroll for the NFL season. Am I right, Gup?
Yes, sir.
And Russ, you know too. You got to get all the golf monies in you can, right?
We got to build it up. We got to finish strong.
That is exactly what I'm thinking. I've been just piss poor at majors from a DraftKings perspective. From a betting perspective, I've been bailed out a few times. I had those exotic parlays with Spieth I was able to cash out. Tommy Fleetwood making that historic run, getting the top 5 for me at the U.S. Open really came through. And then, you have the Open Championship, which was just a complete disaster for me. When you push all in on Dustin Johnson, it's not going to turn out all that well. But first of all, I want to introduce everyone more formally. Brandon Guptill from gupscorner.com. What is happening, my man? What's going on over at the site?
Not much. We're gearing up, getting ready for, the big Super 7 that you and Feinberg and others were all a part of last year, where you put some major development into it to allow it to run more smoother and on its own database. So that's been a lot of our focus, getting ready for football season. And obviously, like you said, trying to wrap up golf on a solid note, but we have a ton of good football products coming out, and we're looking forward to everybody joining that and making it even bigger than last year.
Yeah, the Super 7, if people don't know, it's a lot like the Vegas Super Contest. In the Super Contest, you have to put up like 10 grand, and you have to pick 5 games against the spread every week. In the Super 7, far less expensive, far more manageable, a lot more people, mind you, but the payouts are great. Josh does great work putting all that together, and you make 7 picks against the spread every week, and then there's segment winners, there's winners at the end of the season. I highly recommend it, and you'll be seeing me tweet out and even talking about it on the show the closer we get to week 1 of the NFL season. And don't forget to go to facebook.com/thepme or to dkplaybook.com to find the entire 2018 fantasy football draft guide, all completely free on demand whenever you want it. But it's not just Gup and I, as you saw earlier. Russell Whalen at NYC Punter is on the line as well. We got you out of the graphic board and from the shadows live on video. What's going on?
Yeah, man, we finally got the video to work, man. It's always great to be here with you. I have so much fun doing this. We had that historic Koepka hit for the U.S. Open, and then we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We tried to really parlay it for the British, and never quite found my way onto Molinari. So I've been kind of thrashing myself for a while with that, but it's time to get back positive, get focused again, and I think we can just, for what do they call it? Glory's last shot. I call it Glory's last hole. But I think we can try to find a winner here.
All right, let's start with you on this one, Russ, then. What are the first things that you notice about the betting board? Do you think that the guys are overvalued because you have like Dustin Johnson at 9-1, he's the favorite, but everyone else is creeping in that like teens to like low 20s area? Are you interested in those numbers right now, waiting for some drift, or are you just looking at the back of the board?
Yeah, great. First of all, great question. Great place to start. I kind of feel like we always start there, Pat, which is like, what do we do at the top of the board here? As you know, I tend to try to leave it alone as much as possible. I think we're going to get a good feel for, I think that having the WGC event right now is going to give us a good feel as to who's on form, what the situation is. We have a couple of injuries lingering. We have the Rose situation. So at least for the moment, I'm going to kind of leave that alone. I think I'm going to start. So I have somebody in the 20s I need to discuss with you. But then I think I'm going to start a little bit further down. I'm going to key on not getting totally overexposed, which is something that happened to me at Carnoustie. And it really kind of put me on the back foot for the rest of the weekend. But I think a lot of the areas where I want to get exposed to, you saw my tweet last night about Kyle Stanley. But I think there's a lot of value, and I think we could get a surprise winner here. If the PGA presents us with a chance to maybe get a surprise guy. So I think, smattering in the mid-range, some upper three-digit guys, and then, we could discuss, the favorites, as you like.
Hey, Gup, what are you first noticing when we just look at this board to start off with? And are you putting a lot of stock in what actually happens at the WGC to try to ride some form?
Yeah, I was making my notes last night, and there are some guys that I've starred for today's conversation to go, how do they do this week? A Woodland, his form's coming back just a little bit. He's triple digit. Is he a guy that could be in good form for the PGA? Rory's a guy that low digit, like you said. Is he going to continue putting hot? Came in at 500 a day. I agree with Punter on, just like this week, I didn't take a lot of low guys because I feel in a star-studded event like this, you hope for a Kyle Stanley or someone to go post a big number. And let's say DJ goes 200 a day and he's, six back or so, 5 or 6 back. I'm going to get a way better number tonight on DJ than I would pre-tourney. And so those guys, I just kind of roll the dice and hope that someone goes low that's not supposed to, and maybe get a little bit better value as the tournament goes on. And I did what Punter did at the Masters. I got way overexposed at the Masters and had zero Project Read. And so I've kind of had to take my medicine there and kind of try to jump back moving forward. So I'm taking that approach this next week as well.
All right. So are there any courses that you're looking at in general to kind of give you a feel? Because this is going to be a Reese Jones redesign. I mentioned on the DraftKings preview show that there's a bunch of them out there that have hosted major championships or FedEx Cup playoff events like Eastlake, Baltusrol, Bethpage, Atlanta Athletic Club, Congo, Medina, Oakland Hills, Torrey Pines, Hazeltine, Cog Hill, and you see a lot of really good players. But I think that Bethpage, with so many shots working from right to left at this course, I think it's like 8 of the 18 play some sort of dogleg left, that Bethpage is very much the same when it comes to it. And when you look at who's done well at Bethpage over the year, obviously Lucas Glover won the 2009 U.S. Open, Tiger won in 2002, and then just some of the Barclays events over the years, or the Northern Trust. Reed won 2 years ago over Griot and O'Hare. Nick Watney is someone that I'm actually going to be betting for the PGA Championship. He won in 2012. Are there any other courses that you're mixing in to try to give you a little bit of feel for who can play well at this style of course?
For me, you said 2 of them was Baltusrol and Bethpage. I actually don't hate looking at how they do this week. I mean, it's not exactly set up, but, going to look at courses, especially where the rough is penal. It looks like this will be, I'm leaning right now. I started building my DraftKings model this morning a little bit, and definitely going to favor guys that can hit fairways, and give themselves a shot at the green over distance. Not that distance won't matter, but that ball striking off the tee type numbers, fairways gain, good drive blend. I put in there this morning just to kind of see who's overall striping it good off the tee, which, like a Rory, a Stinson. If Stinson, like Punter said, he's an injury guy where you're like, all right, does he come out this week and play well? If he does, he's number 1 in my stat model this morning. I'm like, well, he might be a good bet going into next week.
What are you looking for, Punter? Are you seeing like, hey, maybe I'm just going to ride some recent form? Because I think that Bridgestone is a pretty comparable type of track. It is a par 70. It is on the longer side. It's not quite as long as Bellerive is going to be. But, if players can do well at the WGC, they should be able to parlay that forward.
Yeah, and, it speaks volumes about the community we have, where we all have different kind of proficiencies and different kind of strengths in how we grade things and look at things. Like, I almost 90% of the time I'm tuning into your early look before you even do the shows every week. you do you publish a page. I think it's probably for one of your, I don't know if it's for Yahoo or whatever. I'm not even sure. But in there, you tend to give a lot of corollary courses and things like that. And a lot of stat things that you're looking at. And I kind of lean into you for that. You know me, I'm kind of more of a recent form guy. So I'm going to be paying heavy attention to what goes on this week. Obviously we don't know a lot about Bellerive, right? So it's what's the situation here with regards to, who's going to come and play well? I know what you mean about the draw thing. Guys who play a draw, I think are expected to do well, but I'm just going to really focus on what happens in this tournament here at the WGC and who comes in with a lot of strength.
So, Gup, you talked about your stat model, Henrik Stenson, rating out really well. For me, what did you run that by? Is that a long-term model? Is that a short-term model? What were you looking at? Because for mine, over the past 50 rounds, if you just look at it, Stenson rates out 8th for me, with DJ coming in at number 1.
Yeah, I did last 24 rounds inside the last 2 years, and I did all-time because guys like Tiger and that obviously didn't have it. So I kind of looked at both to see, but after longer than 2 years kind of gets way out there, but I did last 24 rounds for this morning's model.
All right, who are some of the other guys that were popping up? Because we'll talk about a lot of them here when we get into the favorites. Casey was second to mine, Rose, Justin Thomas, Bryson, Neiman just keeps popping. Then guys like Emiliano Grillo, Alex Noren, Luke List, which, if the stats are telling me Luke List, I can't get away from Luke List. But who else was popping up there statistically for you?
Casey was number 2, so that was one. Obviously, the big guys, Rory, Ricky, DJ are all up there in the top 10. Adam Scott was number 12, so he's, and they're going to continue to let him cheater putt, it looks like. So, that's a factor that you have to, because otherwise he's playing great. So if they're going to let him anchor or whatever they're calling it, then he may be in play. And I want to see how he does this week. Bubba, was number 5, and then some sleeper type guys. Anabon Lahiri was top 20.
Oh God.
Yeah. He went 500 this morning. So I was like, oh, well, form's coming in. Benny On was up there. He had a strong start this morning. I actually laid a bet on him. I know we'll get to it, but I did take him at 150 to 1 this morning next week, early, as one of my early plays.
So, Punter, let me throw this out here to you as well. When we look at past major championships that have been of a Reese design, you have Baltusrol, that was Walker over Day. And then if you go back to 2005, that was Phil over Elkington. Elk and Thomas Bjorn. Probably not too much stock put into that. You have the Atlanta Athletic. I don't know why I'm getting stumbled up on that, but that is where Keegan beat Duffner and Toms beat Phil. If there's one kind of common thread, and you have Glover won one, Reed won a Barclays, but you have Glover winning a U.S. Open at that course. Y.E. Yang beat Tiger at Hazeltine. Tiger won. Tiger's played really well, but that's Tiger. He played really well everywhere. But it seems like you're getting a lot of these tee to green guys and not the ultimate putters. But if you look at the 2008 event at this course in the BMW Championship, it was all hot fire putters at the very top. Would you be leaning towards some of these guys that maybe you don't trust so much to make some putts, but at this course, the Adam Scotts of the world can come through?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, and I went on and I did the flyover of all the holes. There's the website for PGA Championship has a breakdown of the entire course, which is really cool. And you guys broke it down with Leone and Raza on the DraftKings show. Like you said, there's water involved in a lot of the holes, but it's kind of on the edges. The greens are massive. There's a lot of sand. There's a lot of bunkering, and the bunkers are huge, right? So, I think what you're going to get into a situation is you're going to get into a lot of some lag putting, especially if the pin placements are tricky, which I expect them to be. So, yeah, I think, of course you always want a hot putter, and the putter is the big variable, right? But I think the approach is going to be so huge. And maybe this is recency bias and everything, but I cannot get away from Molinari and just how freaking amazing he's been. And I know you probably don't want to talk about this, but I look back and I wanted to know, because I always look at history and how many guys have actually won the British Open and then come in and win the PGA. And it's happened 3 times in the last 15 years. You had Rory in 2014, you had Patty in 08, and you had Tiger in 06. So it's something that does happen. And I mean, the way this guy is striking the ball right now, it really wouldn't shock me if we're talking about, Molinari being right in the mix in this thing. And I know he's not. I know you're not on the Molinari bandwagon, Pat. I think I'm firmly on it now. And I think the biggest problem for a guy like you and a guy like Jeff is like you can't get your head around 22-1 for Molinari.
I can't. I'm not at that. I missed the boat on Molinari. I really did, because those numbers were there for the taking, and I just don't like Molinari, so I wasn't over it. But now he's getting treated basically like he's Justin Rose, and he is deserving of that based on the way that he's played. But like, for whatever reason in my mind, I literally cannot wrap my mind around it. You're correct on that.
Exactly, and I get that, and I can relate to that. And unfortunately, it was a bit of that mindset that forced us to miss him for the British Open. And I think what we have to do sometimes is, as punters, we have to have a short-term memory. We really have to be able to put aside things and forget about what happened last time. And, basically, I have to approach this with fresh eyes. And coming in here and talking about, if you're asking me, like, what kind of games fits this course, and of course you want to be long because there is length here and you want to be accurate. But Molinari's he's had the complete game that I just can't ignore. So if you're asking me, any of these guys from like 25-1 on up, he's going to be the one guy that I would put money on, hands down.
Okay, so we'll jump into the favorites in a second. From that leaderboard at the 2016 Barclays that was at Bethpage, Reed won at -9. Griot and O'Hare were tied for second. Then you got Scott, Day, Woodland, Kokrak, Ricky, Ryan Moore, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, Billy Horschel, Bubba Watson, Phil, Charlie Hoffman, Dustin Johnson. Like, it's a really star-studded leaderboard, and if that is the type of shot shape that you're going for, clearly these guys can do it. And you mentioned approach. If we look back at the past 24 rounds, talk about who is leading in approach, the guy number one in strokes gained is Tiger, Neiman, Stenson, DJ, then Ryan Moore, Molinari, like you mentioned, then Keegan, Sink, Sergio, Justin Rose, Patrick Reed, Adam Scott, Ian Poulter are the leaders in that category over the past 24 rounds. But I want to get into these favorites because we're just kind of dancing around it a little bit. Dustin Johnson is the prohibitive favorite coming off a win at 9-1. That is slightly less than I bet him at the Open Championship. Didn't really work out well. Rory is 12-1, so is Spieth. Rose is 18, but we're going to see drift. We've already seen some drift in some spots because of that back injury. We can talk about him. Justin Thomas is 20-1, so is Ricky Fowler, and so is Brooks and Fleetwood. So is Tiger. Then you got Molinari at 22, like you mentioned. Then Day and Rahm are both 25. That's everyone below 30-1 right now. So Gup, for you, it sounded like you were kind of leaning Rory a little bit, and based on the research that I've done, the form that he's shown, I don't know if I want to bite the bullet on Rory at 12-1, but he's played well at PGA Championships before, especially on Reese Designs. And if these are going to be like lightning fast greens, like giant greens, I kind of trust Rory a little bit there. But I might just take him on DraftKings and stay away from the 12-1 number. It seems a bit steep.
Yeah, I had two preseason bets that I made here, and it was DJ. I got him at 11-1, and then Rahm at 18-1. Obviously, DJ, I got a little advantage there, but Rahm, I've lost advantage. Obviously, it was 6 months ago, but so I have some stake on DJ. So having that stake and that he's in just as good as form as anybody, I probably will pass, like you said, and right now I'd be heavy on Rory and DraftKings, and then I'll just let Thursday, Friday, maybe one of those guys drop down. Go back to Fowler. I mean, he's high in my model, and can he just get over the major hump? And is this a spot for him? I'm interested to see how he plays this afternoon and this week. If he, gets hot and finishes top 2 or 3, maybe he can carry that over to next week.
I think there's some, missing out on Molinari and all these wins has been, I wouldn't say it's personally devastating because I was never going to be betting him anyway. But like not betting Ricky if he eventually wins, great. That means everyone who's been riding Ricky for the past 5 years is going to break even on your Ricky number.
Right. Yeah. And the guy that, especially watching him this morning, the one that right at the edge of 25-1, at least on Bovada this morning, he played well this morning, would be Jason Day. He's got the pedigree and he's an elite talent. And if he's coming together, I definitely 25-1 might be the best number there in that 25 or under numbers.
Well, what do you think, Russ? Raza and Leone were both on Day. We know about the short game. We know about the putting. He played really well at Baltusrol. I was trying to live bet him the entire time. He ended up losing to Walker. I thought Walker would fall apart, and it never actually happened. But are we in a spot now? I went over how poor Day has been off the tee, how poor his approaches have been. But if he can keep this short game going, even if he gets into trouble, the bogey avoidance should still be pretty good. Like, I'm really torn on Jason Day right now. Do you have any thoughts?
So if we're talking about the 25 to, or what are you seeing? Because I'm on 365, I'm seeing like 25 to 1.
Yeah, 25 to 1 right now.
Yeah. Now, listen, I can't talk anybody out of that. The problem with Jason Day that I've seen lately is one that you're trying to hit on basically, which is that, a big number is looming, and frankly, to win in an elite field like this, to win, against this class of player, you can't be putting up a snowman here and there, or, it's just occasionally. And the thing is, he will pay the penalty because, as we mentioned, at least, I think you said on the show this morning, or the one you did with Raza, like at least a dozen of these holes are bordered by creeks, right? And I could just see it. All it's going to take is a momentary lapse for him, and he's in the creek. He puts up a big number, and then you don't hear from him again. So I mean, can I talk people out of 25 to 1? It's not a bad number. It's just I don't think it's going to be something that I'm going to be on.
Yeah, in this field right now, over the past 24 rounds, 129th in fairways gained for Jason Day. The number is so big, though, that I am somewhat intrigued because I said it at the U.S. Open. The reason I was fading Day is because he's not going to continue to make every 10-foot putt like he had been doing, and it was just amazing. But if you can catch him, and he's already done it twice this year, against really good fields at Torrey Pines and another one at Wells Fargo, like tough courses as well, long courses, that it just feels like his scrambling game, if this doesn't turn into like a ridiculous minus 20 PGA Championship, the winning score is going to be like minus 8. His ability to grind could really prevail here. And that number is so enticing. Like, you mentioned with Molinari, maybe we should change our reasoning on Molinari, but like if you gave me a choice between Day at 25 and Molinari at 22, I'd take Day.
Well, and see, that's where I'm trying to go back to, like, there's something programmed in your brain right now to be against Molinari. When in reality, like if we walked up to the local muni and those guys were standing there and you said to me, Russ, like, let's do a $500 bet. You pick which guy you want. I'm taking Molinari head to head 100 times out of 100 right now. I mean, the guy is like, and it's funny, you said on the show with Raza, like, that there's really not a lot of guys that are going to hit every 10-footer. And instantly in my mind flashed, like, what did we see in that final round at the British Open? I mean, Molinari did not miss a putt. Now, I don't want to get completely overboard with this, but I'm just saying, if you're looking at these guys 25 to 1 and on up towards Rory and towards DJ, I just think I can't have exposure to too many of them, so I really got to pick and choose.
Well, I think that kind of goes part and parcel with Molinari. Like when we talk about it, that he was making, that's how he won. He made every single 10-footer possible. But at least historically, we know Jason Day is a good putter, and Molinari reeks on the greens. He had a hot putting week. He's been so good with the flat stick and so good with the approaches that if any of that turns back the other way, I don't think that he'll eject, but he's certainly not going to win. Gup, what do you make of like a Day versus Molinari? Like, I just think skill-wise, Day's a lot better.
Well, the one thing, and I know he just won the British, so this may change, but going into Saturday, he was even, and I think I saw some people getting him at maybe 80 going into the weekend, and it's a name recognition, I think. So I think there's a better chance that Molinari doesn't start hot, and you could get a 50, 40 to 60, somewhere in that number if he's 4 or 5 back compared to Day, just on a name recognition, if that was your strategy. And I agree with Punter on, you don't want to get too overloaded up here at the top, but right now, especially how he played today, I would lean towards Day out the gates, hoping I could get a better Molinari live in the tournament.
What do we do with Spieth? Spieth is 12 to 1. He needs this for the career Grand Slam, a narrative that is not being talked about whatsoever. So even like the major mainstream networks and publications don't feel like Jordan Spieth has much of a shot here. But that's usually when Jordan Spieth just pops up out of nowhere. We saw it at the British. No one was giving him a chance, and then all of a sudden, there he is on Sunday. Fortunately, for the rest of us, he melted down and didn't win. But 12 to 1, like, I'm out on that number. But like, just thoughts on Spieth in general, Gup. Like, we know he has the game to compete, but can he?
Yeah, I mean, he was 4th in my model for the one I did this morning for next week, but like I faded him 100% this week. I just, the Sunday meltdown again at British coming in. Now the narrative will be, how's he play this week? And if he kind of gets the, shitty golf out of the way, and so he could come back and be focused for next week, maybe. But I've been off Spieth for months now. I don't think I've played him in at least eight weeks. So I'm not a Spieth guy, and especially not here. I'll hard pass on that and let others take that ownership. And then I definitely wouldn't bet him that low number, no way.
Yeah, it seems a bit steep. Punter, do you have any interest in Spieth, or are you just off the train as well?
Just off of it for now. I think he's suffering from a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde kind of deal, Pat, where like one round he'll look like insane world beater and we're all shitting ourselves that we're going to get our board swept by this guy, the Wonder Boy. And then the next day he'll come out and he'll look incredibly human. And we're like, why were we even afraid of this thing? So, until he gets that complete thing back together where he's just beating the world, like I'm just going to step to the side.
Okay, the other few guys that are up there, like it's going to be hard to know what's going on with Justin Rose because he withdrew with back spasms. This is golf. We're not going to get an injury report. We'll get like an Instagram video of him hitting a drive and being like, oh yeah, I feel great. But this is going to cause his number to drift, I'm pretty sure. Like he might drop into that 22, 25 range from 18. They're just not doing it yet. We'll probably see that on Monday if it happens at all, especially if negative press comes out about him. But like, I would be inclined to gamble. Like you mentioned Molinari, you mentioned Day, but if Rose drops into that 20 area, he seems to me like he would be the value. Or maybe not. Maybe you guys are Tommy Fleetwood type guys who went from having all the buzz in the world to having no buzz just because this tournament's in America, not Britain. Like, should I be looking at those two guys?
I personally would lean towards a, Brooks, go back to Punter's boy, the big hit there, or a Fowler just before I'd touch Rose or Fleetwood. And Fleetwood's dropped there. He was at 28 this morning on Bovada, but good ball striker, definitely could play here. But I definitely like more value down on the board where I wouldn't touch any of that right now.
Yeah, outside, like any of those names do anything for you, Russ?
So it was well documented how I got bit by Stenson at the British Open. And that's also one of those things that just pops up with punting, especially when we're doing all-in betting and you're doing things 2-3 weeks ahead of a tournament. You're going to get bit by a snake every once in a while. And, having lived through that experience, and you know what? Stenson didn't play all that bad, to be quite honest. But I think there was something a little bit off with him. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you really want to go in with Rose knowing that he's a bit dinged up? And having just lived through that, I got to say I would leave that alone. Now, as for Tommy, I mean, this is no hot take. We've talked about this before, but I really want to see a guy who's won. Now, Tommy hasn't won on the PGA, right? I mean, Tommy's won some Euro Tour events. He's won a variety of things, but he's never won on the PGA as of yet. And I just always have a hard time backing a guy to win a major who hasn't been able to pull down, the Travelers or the John Deere or the whatever the fuck it is, win yourself, get a tournament under your belt, get that winning feeling, and then you can carry that through to a major. So that's kind of what keeps me off of Tommy.
Well, this seems like a course where it's going to be difficult, but there does seem to be scoring opportunities. So I look at someone like Fleetwood, and to a lesser extent, I'm not going to be betting Jon Rahm. But one of these majors, after everyone is off Jon Rahm, he's just going to spike. And he's going to make us all look really foolish because he's going to come out and shoot beat the field by 7 strokes. Almost like when Rory wins championships, Rahm's going to have a major championship where that happens. But Fleetwood and Rahm are just two guys that can go so low, and they have enough length, and especially Tommy because he hits it long and he hits it straight, a lot like Justin Rose, that I'm somewhat intrigued by those guys as well. But do you think we can get any drift on them? Is anyone going to go to the counter and bet Rahm? That 25 number seems like that's the highest it's going to be. It has to come back, doesn't it, Gup?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a guy that, depending on what happens this weekend, could go one way or the other. Obviously, I bet him in February, so I'm kind of locked in on as far as my shares on him. But, yeah, I mean, if he finishes top 4 or 5, it may go the other way. But if he, just struggles, has a big third round and shoots 79 like he's accustomed to do, you may get 33 on him, and I think that's playable. But with the Fleetwood, I would definitely push. I just look at guys like you mentioned earlier, grinding, where I could drop to an Xander who's like Punter said, he's proven he can win on the PGA Tour and grind out wins, and he almost came back and won the British. And I just lean to those type of guys where I'm getting 40 plus numbers before I'd mess around with that area.
Last guy, taken a while for us to get to him, but he's currently playing well at the Bridgestone through one round. People like to bet this guy. He's probably overvalued at 20-1. His name is Tiger Woods. And if this is a course where he needs to hit driver, it's probably not going to be great, but he did lead the field in fairways gained at the British Open. He's continuing to roll that through at the Bridgestone, at least through 18 holes. He's number 1 in approach, Russ. Everything that you like about stats-wise coming in and form-wise, Tiger's kind of meeting that criteria, isn't he?
You know, Pat, and again, this is another guy where you know my stance on it. It's been, you remember a couple of years ago, I had that yes-no prop, like will Tiger win a tournament in this current calendar year? And I had no at like a sick number, and that cashed no problem. But ever since then, I've kind of had a little bit of a negative slant on Tiger. And it's not about the Tiger we know and love. It's not hate on Tiger per se. It's just when you have a surgically reconstructed back, like what does it take to get on level par with, or on an even ground with these guys that are much younger than him, in better shape, in better form, etc. So, but having said all that, there was a moment in round 4 of the British where all of a sudden, like the light bulb went off, and I was like, "Holy shit! I gotta start taking Tiger really seriously now." Like when he got himself in contention in the lead, and I think he went odds on for a second, like he was like even money to win this thing. And I was like, holy shit, it's time for me to really take a serious look. Now, that being said, the biggest problem we have with Tiger is the public, right? The public loves this guy. They're always going to throw money at him just based on name recognition, right? So, you know, at a number like 20-1, it's like, let's say I can only have 1 or 2 guys in that range. Is Tiger going to be one of them? At least for me, not from the off, but I might look to try to get him on side in running if we can.
What do you think a legitimate number is on Tiger? If you were setting the lines, and what would be what would be his proper odds to win this? Because I don't think 20-1 is actually realistic. You're right. The public is pumping up that market, but is he 35-1?
Yeah, that's exactly like looking. So if we look at the range right here of guys in that particular area, like Patrick Reed's 40-1. He's your Masters champion. And then you drop down to kind of bracket that, you got Stenson and Matsuyama. Now, I'm not the biggest Matsuyama fan. I mean, obviously, if he puts everything together, he could win this thing by 15 strokes. That's not a question. I'm just not a big fan of his. But I think Tiger's real number, without the public influence, would be in that range, Pat.
Yeah, Gup, where would you put Tiger? If you were listing your own odds, what would be a fair number for him?
Right around there, probably like 30. I bucket in between Fleetwood and Matsuyama type. I would say Fleetwood at 28's too low, just based on some of the stuff Punter had said. So I would say he's right there between Day and Matsuyama area. You know, Day's 25, Matsu's 35, somewhere in there.
All right, so I'm taking my odds from Bet365. Obviously, you can site shop and find out what the best lines are and exploit those if you want to jump in. But this mid-tier, like you mentioned, Matsuyama's there, Stenson's there, 33 and 35-1. Sergio is 40, Reed's 40, so is Noren. Scheifele is 45. You got Bubba, Finau, Leishman, Casey, Cantlay, Phil, all at 50, then Kuchar and Scott both at 55. Before the season started, when I looked at this course, just a very brief overview, it really reeked of a Matt Kuchar course, and everyone's kind of off of Kuchar at this point. I don't know if I love him the most of all these guys. Like, Cantlay is very intriguing. Paul Casey, at least statistically, sets up really well. And I think that might be where I start my card, at least initially, will be with Paul Casey at 50-1. But I am intrigued with Kuchar at 55. What do you think, Gup?
Yeah, I bet Finau or mid-July at 50, and he hadn't really moved. So he's definitely started my card in this area. Noren's a guy that I'm intrigued with in this area, seeing how he does this week at the WGC. I agree on Cantlay. 66 is where he's at on the one I'm looking at. And he's went on fire this morning. Let's see how he finishes. He seems to trouble down the stretch. You know, when I'm in a tournament like this, and I think Punter said it, you've said it, you know, you do have to look at, do I actually see this guy winning the tournament? You know, and one guy that I think could, and he's been fire since he got rid of the putt-putt ball, and this seems to maybe set up for him, is Bubba at 40. I think I may be on him, especially as I do more research on the course.
I didn't even really consider this to be a Bubba track, but when I talked about at Bethpage, that's a spot where Bubba actually played quite well. And I mean, he's competed at PGA Championships in the past, lost in that playoff to Martin Keimer at Whistling Straits before. Do you have any interest in Bubba, Punter?
Oh man, that guy.
But Bubba has been very good to me this year.
That guy. Yeah, no. And I mean, he won at the Travelers, right? And we were on him. I mean, the number was silly though, right? It was like, he was only like 25 or 30. He was nothing, right? I mean, we cashed that. But I mean, so what is he here? He's 50, right?
Yeah.
No, it's just, as Gup was chatting, I just wanted to glance at the weather, Pat, and I know it's a little bit early to do that, but I just wanted to kind of bring that into just to frame our conversation a little bit. And from what I'm seeing, it's going to be really freaking hot, really humid. It's typical kind of like center of the country, kind of typical like stormy weather can blow through, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty dry for the most part, with maybe a pop-up thunderstorm here and there. And I don't know about the winds, but anyway, circling back to Bubba, I can't get my head around that for a major right here. So I think I got to leave him alone, but I have other guys in the 50-1 range that I'm looking at.
All right, hit me with a few.
All right, well, so we had a debate about Cantlay for the British, and I was slowly eating those words as he started off pretty hot, and he played and he handled himself really well. So, and I think Gup mentioned it too. So Cantlay is a guy that I want to look at, and I want to see how he concludes this weekend. But he's off to a decent start here. He's right up at the top of the board right now. So let's see how he handles himself. So that's 50-1. And then I think you got to talk about Tony Finau. And that's another guy that's not my brand. But if you look at his finishes in the majors this year, even after like completely imploding his own ankle by doing some crazy celebration stuff in Augusta, I mean, the guy's like, I think he's T10'd every major this season. Can he not, if this is a driving length and, I'm not so sure about the accuracy, but his length is going to come into play here, right?
I would think so, as long as he's not spraying it everywhere. And as we saw at the Open Championship, that wasn't really the case. I'm going to give him a pass for his T37 at the Canadian Open after just going to the wire at the British Open like 4 days before. It was just nice to see him come out, make the cut. But it's funny, like in these tougher fields, some of these harder courses, even as I scroll back to Bethpage in 2016, Tony Finau was T12 at that event. Maybe and even like something like Riviera earlier this year, another spot where he competed. You'd have to think that the length comes in. No love for Casey whatsoever here?
Okay, so I have a thing, just like I think we all have certain guys that we have a thing for, and we just avoid them like the plague. And the thing about Casey is, like, Casey, the way that I would categorize Casey at this point of his career is he's like a stat popper. He's like, there are going to be weeks where he's going to be like the number one talked about guy on Fanshare or whatever, or he's going to pop in all the models. Fantasy National is going to have him ranked super high. But like, does he win? Like, he was in that position to win the Travelers. And I don't know what tilted him. I don't know what got him off his game. I know, like you said, on one of the holes, like he drove it behind the only tree that was in the middle of the fairway. Like, that would be pretty tilting. But again, like, my thing is, like, I want to see guys close when it's winning time. And Casey just continues to drop the ball. So it's like, is that the kind of guy you want to have your money on?
Well, I mean, he did pick up his first win, but I mean, this is the same narrative we could have said about Molinari, like, legitimately 10 weeks ago. Well,
when Molinari won at Wentworth, something went on in my head, because to me, Wentworth it's probably about the closest thing they have to Augusta or a major championship, on the Euro circuit. And, they have the French Open and they have a couple of others, but I mean, going in there and out-dueling all the top Euro players, and there were a lot of players in that field, even beyond the Euro players, and he took them all down, and he did it in convincing fashion. So it was easy to kind of see the arc. I want to see an arc in a guy. Molinari won at Wentworth. He won his PGA Tour event. He won his British Open. I mean, the arc with Molinari right now, and it might be a sell high kind of thing. I will admit that. He might have peaked, and he might be about to roll over. But, like, I don't see any arc with Casey that gets me excited.
Well, if Francesco Molinari is so good, he wouldn't have bogeyed hole 3 T53. Take that, Francesco Molinari. PGA bogeys just popping up. Gup, what are you liking in this area? Will you be on Casey? Because I think that 50 to 1 is just a really good number for him.
I think it's a good number. He may be more like DraftKings. He's number 2 in my model right now as far as stats go, especially he's top 4 in my driving blend, my approach, and then bogey avoidance. He was number 1 in the model I ran. So like Punter said is, he's stat popping all over the place. I just personally, I'm very aligned there to say I don't see him winning a major this year, maybe ever, but I just don't. Is his game there? Sure. But I like others that even better odds that I can't trust Casey right now to win anything, especially this much. If he melted on Sunday at Travelers, I can't imagine if he had the lead going into the PGA Championship, what would happen.
Well, as long as he's not playing in the group behind JB Holmes, who was taking 30 minutes to really mull over every single shot, he's a very fast player. So, get him behind like Snedeker and you're all good to go. So maybe Snedeker can pop up and that way it could bleed into a Casey victory. That's actually what happened. I think I got that out of order. But anyway, when he won at Valspar earlier this year, it was like all the fast players were in the final groups and Casey was just able to go out and set a pace. And it was very nice for him. But is there anyone in that 30 to 60 area that you're actually eyeing? Like I said, right now for me, it's Casey. And I'm going to give a hard look to Kuchar.
I started with Finau, so I definitely will do that. And, Kuchar's a guy, he was number 1 in my stat model this week, and I kind of did a little bit different thing. And I comparing the two, he came back for the next week's model. He's number 11. So he's popping in my models and definitely has the game. It's one of those things I talk about it on our other shows was that, I have to eye how I think the tournament's going to come out. Like you said, if it's a 15 to 20 under, I don't think Kuchar can hang with that. But if we kind of get into the week and seeing that, man, this court, get some feedback from the players, practice rounds, it may be a 6 to 9 winner. The Kuch is definitely in play, and so is a guy like, and we'll get to him in a second, but like Webb, who, those lower scoring that can grind it out, I definitely would put Kuch in the mix there. But I would start with Bubba, Finau, and Cantlay right now in that range.
Yeah, I might be sold on Cantlay. The sand, there's going to be a lot of sand around here. We always joke the greenside bunkers are always what eat up Patrick Cantlay. But it just his scrambling, his around the green, and his sand saves have just been a lot better this season than I think it sticks out so much in our mind that we remember him trying to chase down Hadwin at Valspar and just like flubbing every bunker shot, and he just would have run away and won that. But this seems like a nice breakout spot for, like you mentioned Finau, you mentioned Cantlay, that if guys are going to break through, these big tee to green guys and Finau's actually been a positive putter on bentgrass so far this season, which is something to look into, that the PGA Championship does seem like the right spot for them. But when we drop down from the 60 to 100 range, Gup, is there anyone in there you're eyeing outside of like Webb?
Yeah, so I have some stars by like Berger and Chappie. I want to see how they, Chappie's coming along a little bit. He was one of the guys I played in showdowns because the form was picking up. I didn't have him in the main slate. So he's a guy I'm eyeing. Obviously, I said, right at 100 earlier, the guy that I want to see how he does this week is Woodland. I was on him early in the season when he won. And then he just crashed hard, basically. And he seems to be upticking a little bit. And if he can perform well this week at 100 to 1, I definitely like him there.
Punter, what are you looking at? Because like Neiman falls into this range. He's 66 to 1, his first major as a professional, but he rates out statistically really well. Is he someone to get on now before? I mean, if he continues to play well, by the time the Masters comes along, he's going to be like 30 to 1.
Yeah, I knew we would get to him because I've heard you mentioning his name a little bit, and I think that he's popping in the stats, and it's obvious why he's popping in the stats because he's just been fucking phenomenal, and his game is just it's really impressive to see somebody so composed who's just new to the thing, and because it's easy to be starstruck, and we've seen a lot of guys come up to the tour and kind of backslide a little bit. This guy's just full on advancing. Now, I think it's a bit of a trap, to be honest. I mean, he could go out and win this thing. But again, I fall back to I kind of have little rules and little sets of criteria when I'm grading guys. And I would like to see him win. I want to see Neiman win the John Deere. Or I want to see him win, something.
You know what? You know who didn't need to win the John Deere? The real deal, Sean McKeel, when he won the PGA Championship.
Hey, and you're right. And I will say, we can get a shock winner here. And that's one of the things that's one of the reasons I'm trying to get really reinvigorated and really amped up for this particular tournament, because you never know what's going to happen here. And that's why, but anyway, for Niemann, I think I got to stay away from it. But before we kind of just move right away from the 50-1 area, what about, because I'm looking at the board now, up top, I see Leishman. And I want to ask Gup about this. I want to ask you about this. I mean, Leishman was a guy I was on for the British Open, and he was doing decent, right? And then the guy is he's like a 3-putt machine. Now, and that's why I'm probably going to have to swerve him for this particular tournament, because on massive greens like this, I could see him. But I mean, he's a guy who can get a run of birdies going, and then all of a sudden he 3-putts, and it is, you just can't. You're infuriated. Like, why am I on this guy?
Well, if you're going to give me shit about Paul Casey, come on. You're going to throw out Mark Leishman at the same number?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not on it, but then you look up at the WGC right now, and he's 5 under, and
yeah, go look up the WGC leaderboard on Sunday and see where he's at.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. All right, so but either way, I got to avoid Niemann, and I got to leave Leishman alone, and I'd be inclined to kind of move towards the 100-1 area where Gup started talking about, like a guy like Chappie. Like a guy like Chappie is a guy we're gonna have to start talking about, like Finau in a way. Like there are certain guys that get it up for tougher events and tougher challenges, and we saw that at Carnoustie with Chappell. I don't think anybody expected him to be doing what he was doing.
No, he had played so poorly coming into it. The guy in this range, before we get to the hundreds, and it's been after the meltdown in Germany, very poor start at the WGC, and we might see this number drift. But like, if you're going to give me Niemann at 66, why wouldn't I just bet Bryson at 60, he beats the criteria. He's shown he can win. He wins at tough courses. He can win a high-end scoring event. He can win a grind fest. Like, I think Bryson's being undervalued.
Well, he's dead last right now in the WGC, which I know you're not keeping an eye on, but he's +4 right now.
I am. He just did travel back from Germany last weekend when he melted in like the final group.
I mean, hey, listen, as long as he can use compasses, protractors, and, other kind of scientific devices, I mean, why not?
I worry about Bryson with the way he collapsed. I stayed off him this week because I wanted to see, was he able to get by it, get through it? Obviously through 8 holes, it looks like no, because he seems like a kind of an emotional guy, as you saw some of the videos from his driving range and stuff like that. And I wonder how long that'll have an effect. But if he drifts up, if he has a shit show this week and he goes up to 80 to 100, you may, maybe you bite on that just because he has the potential. But right now it doesn't look like it's going that way, where he's got, like if you're on Fowler, we talked about earlier, he's 4 under through 7. And so, you may want to jump on him because he may suddenly be 14 or 16 by the end of the tournament.
Last guy below 100, I did want to throw out that he's been playing a lot better, and it's Tyrrell Hatton. If this, again, becomes like a grind fest, you want to have a good putter on your side. I know he's an emotional hothead, but unlike like Rahm or Bryson, when he's freaking out on the course, he doesn't actually implode on the scorecard. You just notice it a lot because he's not making birdies and he starts freaking out, and he's making pars. He's not making quads like Rahm does. Like this seems like a spot. And we see these like really weird like British players pop up at some of the tougher PGA championships. I completely forget who the guy was. It might have been David Howell at the Rory PGA Championship at Kiowa Island when that played really tough. But I think the PGA Championship, if the scoring does get more difficult, could be open to one of these Brit surprises. Because I don't mind Poulter at 100-1 too, Gup.
No, yeah, I agree. A guy I kind of have circled right there, and just because of some of the course model at that 100, at least on Bovada, is Ryan Moore.
I like Moore too.
Yeah, I have him marked as good value, definitely worth the punt at 100-1. So I would take him over a Poulter on that spot.
Anyone from that actual like legit 100 range punter that you like?
Yeah. So now I got to be honest, not really. I mean, I circled Chappie, right? And I mean, I always look at Charlie, but I tend to think like I like to look at the season in different slices, and like Charlie to me, I think is usually like checking out a little bit by now. Like whereas he may pop more in like the Hawaii swing, and so I looked at Charlie, but I don't want any of that. Ryan Moore, I could sort of get behind. I wonder like with his, I mean, when we're talking about length, you're not talking about a guy who can really put it out there, if I'm not correct. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but, if he's having to take long irons into a lot of these greens, I could see his proximity potentially suffering. But from a DraftKings perspective, he could be interesting because I don't know how highly owned he will be.
Well, it just, if we talk about Charlie, we talk about Ryan Moore, it seems like if they're ever going to get a major, it would probably, although those are two guys that play really well at the Masters every single year, and the lack of length doesn't hurt Moore there, or even Hoffman. He's going to hit all the fairways, and he's shown a proclivity to play either really well at wedge courses, something like the John Deere, or ones where he has to just smack long irons, because it's not only going to be him that's smacking long irons to a lot of these. Even some of the longer hitters will be forced to take some clubs out of the bag. They just don't play week to week.
Yeah, I think Moore is great for, if I had your each way type stuff, he would be a great play on that. And at 7,400 on DraftKings, right now he would definitely be in that type player pool for me. And maybe a top 5, top 10 for sure. But 100 to 1, you throw a couple bucks on it. I mean, I think it's worth it when you start getting into that triple digit for him.
Anyone else just below this? Because I have a few guys highlighted. I'm still trying to search for Nick Watney odds. He's not even on the board yet. So a lot of this too, like I'm playing mainly on Bet365, which has those each way bets, which means if I put down $20, 10 would go towards the 100 to 1, and then $10 would go towards the top 5 at 1/4 those odds, which would be 25 to 1, which is a nice way, I think at least, to recoup some value on some of these longer end plays. But when we get to Monday, Bet365 will probably offer top 7 instead of top 5, or top 8 instead of top 5. So I like to wait until Monday. We see the drift and we can capitalize on some of these longer odds. So the long shots that I'm looking at right now, I want to dig in. Like I've mentioned, I still haven't actually wagered on anyone yet. I'll wait till Monday. Russell Knox and Kyle Stanley, 125 to 1. Billy Horschel's been playing surprisingly decent. He's 150 to 1, someone who's won at East Lake in the past. Danny Willett, I mean, he's 150 to 1. That's the lucky number, Russ. 150 for Danny Willett.
Hey, I mean, I could not begrudge that. And in a way, like I like to think about it as like when you're at the roulette wheel and you hit a number, you always leave a few chips on that number. So if we throw a little bit out to Danny, I mean, that's just something that we owe him as tribute, right?
Yeah, the other two, I mean, Woo is up there. He's at 150, and that's just like an auto bet. But Luke List is at 150. I might have to jump on that now before he wins the WGC Bridgestone. And then the one that really stuck out to me, I had really no interest in him, but I thought the odds were really strange. Russell Henley's 175 to 1, Gup.
Yeah, I had him marked as a kind of one of those WTF and kind of look into. I definitely like his game. He in this type of course, if we see it going at an 8 to 9 under, he can compete with these guys. And I had 3 marked in that area. One that, and then maybe like a first round later, he seems to just come out of nowhere and shoots a 64, and it's Duffner. As I learn more about the course in the next few days, if it seems like he may be able to attack, he's a guy that can get hot at 125 to 1. And then the other one's the one I said I bet this morning is Benny On. I just thought 150 to 1 for a guy that's form is great. He started out 4 under quick this morning. And so as I was researching, I was like, I'll jump on it at 150. He faltered down the end like some seem to be doing today, but I think that's a great number for Benny On. I wish I had the cash out option on stuff like that, like you guys do. I saw DK actually is bringing that, the New Jersey book they opened, they had the cash out. So that'd be exciting to have some of those big numbers. And if they're leading Sunday and you think they're going to, collapse, you can buy out and get some equity back.
Yeah, it's been if I had just hit the cash out option every time I considered it, I feel like I'd be up a lot more in terms of then you start getting greedy, be like, no, that could be a little bit more instead of, taking your money and run. Like, it's just so funny with golf betting where, you would take a cash out at probably less than even in a close football game, but I'd be like, they're only offering me 22 to 1 on my bet. Screw that. I don't want that at all. I'll hold out for like 50 to 1, and then you end up losing that bet. But you must have put a substantial amount of money on Benny Ann because he's still listed on Bovada in the 150 range, but he's now 100 to 1.
Oh, wow. Moved him this morning. I did put a little bit on him, but I still like him at 100. I just think his game's kind of coming in there. One of the guys he's just a guy in great form coming in, and that anybody that's in good form, triple digit or better, I'm going to take a little piece of.
What do you think, Russ, from this beyond 100 range? Are there any long shots that you do have interest in? Because I know that generally speaking, you don't.
Yeah, well, and I think I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach this time around. And I did get on Kyle Stanley, and that was like I mentioned him last night, and then he came out and he was barnstorming this course, and I was like, all right, enough is enough. That's one of those ones where like you better jump on it before the number moves. So I think I got 140 to 1 on him. Pat, I was going to ask you because I know you were on him for the British, and I was on him at Augusta. What about Pat Perez?
I don't know. Like his number isn't ridiculous anymore. Like it's back to probably where it should be, around like 100 or 125. Like he was 500 to 1 at the Open Championship. Like that was just insane.
Yeah. And I think part of that number is, the performance that he did. I mean, he did fade later on, and as we probably all assumed he might. But I know you were holding out hope for him to kind of make a run at it at Carnoustie. But if you're looking for triple-digit bombs, I wouldn't be against a couple of shekels on Pat Perez. When it comes to Ben On, I still go back to that time. Remember a couple of years ago, what was it? Was it the Zurich when he was in a 3-way playoff?
Oh, yeah. You know how I remember this very vividly? Because do you know who the 3 people in that playoff were?
It was Lovemark, because I think I had Lovemark. And it was fucking Ryan Stewart, right? Who won?
It was Brian Stewart or Chris Stroud. I always get them mixed up. But Lovemark and On were in it, and that was at the period where I was like, 80 to 1 on these guys. I'm betting those every week. And then just like, oh, God.
No, I remember it was a Monday playoff because I'm tweeting to you. I'm like, dude, I'm on. Fortunately, because you know me, I'm like a hedger. And like I had On and Lovemark, and I was like, I will not be able to mentally cope with this if I don't win any fucking money right now. So I did put some on the other guy, and I ended up having a pretty decent weekend. But anyway, my main point is like, ever since then, I've just had this mental block with Benny On. Like I cannot, and even when I see him storming up the leaderboard, I'm like, he ain't gonna win this. So I don't know. I'm not pissing all over Gup's pick there. I'm just saying he's a guy that I have a mental block towards him.
No, I understand that. I mean, Kevin Na was a guy for me. I remember either last year or year before I had him to win at long odds, and he's on either the 18th hole or playoff hole, and he pulls out a fucking driver off the deck. And I'm like, what is he doing? All he's got to do, I mean, it's like all you got to do is par, he wins it, and he chokes. And so I've refused to bet him since then. And so everybody has that guy. So when I watched him win this year, it just made me sick.
But. Well, I actually wanted to bring him up because he's 150 to 1 right now. And I think that he sort of has, if we start talking about like, Russ, let me ask you this. What is the major difference between Molinari and Kevin Na?
That is a good question. I would say a lot of it up until Na's win recently would have been between the ears.
Okay, let's rewind this conversation to 4 months ago, before Molinari went on this run. And Kevin Na hasn't won in the same time too. So 4 months ago, we're talking in February. What's the difference between Molinari and Na?
I might even say the same thing, because I think we all know that Kevin Na is a skilled player, and I'm glad you brought him up because I have a star next to his name too at 150 to 1, and I think he would definitely be worth a punt right here. And I think a lot of us who have gone through the trials and tribulations of Kevin Na, especially like him making like an 18 down in Texas or whatever, it's just a lot of it's been mental. A lot of it's been that kind of yippee kind of thing where he can't find himself like pulling the driver back and actually executing the shot. And it's not that the talent's never been there. So I think if as he gains that confidence, he's got that win now. He's a guy that I think we have to seriously consider for this PGA Championship.
Yeah, well, he's someone who's excellent around the green, great out of the sand. He's really good on the greens. He's going to hit a ton of fairways and good with approaches. I worry that the course might be a little bit too long for him. And do I really think that Kevin Na is going to win? Nah, I don't. But like as a top 10 play, a top 20 play, I'll have the money on him to win, just in case I'm wrong about these. I'm wrong about everything anyway, so maybe I can win by being wrong on thinking something. But like a top 20 play on him and a top 20 play on, the other one was Bo Hostler, who I think actually sets up quite well, Gup.
Yeah, I like his game. I've liked him all year. I haven't been on him a whole lot. And so I could definitely say that on each. But one guy I don't think anybody's mentioned yet. What do you think about Griot? He's 125 this morning on Bovada.
I just feel like Griot's a trap at every major, isn't he?
Yeah, he killed me at Carnoustie. That was especially DraftKings wise, but yeah, He could be. I mean, I don't see him winning. It goes back to that thought, but that number, like I started because it just seemed really high for that guy, that good of a talent at 125 to 1.
Like I'm even looking in my model that I ran right now. He's 11th of anyone in this field. Like, Punter, do you have any idea about Griot? Because it seems like he's either all in or all out. But even when you look at the courses he's played well at this year, despite not being a super long hitter, he's an accuracy guy, but he's played well at the longer tracks.
This is a guy who's not my brand. He's one of those guys, and I never tend to get him right. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like he doesn't have a PGA win under his belt yet, does he?
He has one. I believe he won the Safeway 2 years ago.
All right, so he's got that win. I don't know. I honestly, I defer to you guys on him because he's a guy that I never get right, but he's typically not a part of my card. I will be honest.
Well, he always just pays such long. Could it be something even to the effect of like we talked about? You mentioned Tony Finau, how when it gets ramped up, Kevin Chappell as well in these major championships, that they show up every single time. And it's like, not every single time for Chappell, but Finau so far this year, you get a hard course, you get a strong field, and these guys are at the very top of their game. Griot seems to be the exact opposite.
Well
exactly, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Gup, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to agree with that. I thought you were going to say he was like Finau, and then when you said at the end he's the exact opposite, I was like, that's exactly right. He's exactly opposite of the Finau, the Xander. When it's a tough course and a tough contest, these guys show up, and Griot seems to crumble.
Yeah, I don't know if I love that. What about Luke List? 150 to 1.
It was only a matter of time before we got here. Well, he's doing pretty well at the WGC right now. So, what is he's like 5 under over here. So, and what number are we seeing? 150 to 1?
150. He was the same. He was 125 this week, which I'm in on, as always with Luke List. I'm just really going to bet him until he wins. Especially because he continues to be like anywhere between like 80 and 150 that, I can wait it out for 3 years, and when he wins, I'll still be profitable on him. It's the exact opposite mentality of betting Ricky every single week.
What? How about, hey, Gup, how about we all put a couple of shekels on Luke List, and if it hits, we fly somewhere and have some fun, like Vegas or something.
We get to have a Pat Mayo Luke List party.
That's it, man.
I mean, we could probably fly a Luke List in for that.
Oh.
But like
him and Siwoo, you're gonna have some Siwoo, right?
Well, yeah, I will have some Siwoo. It's funny that you bring up Siwoo a little bit because I was actually speaking to Paul about this a little bit earlier. People are like, oh, how do you play Siwoo every single week? But like with the each ways this year and the odds that you always get, I believe he's come top 5 twice so far in the 2018 season. Once in the Swing and once at Heritage, and I'm still up money from Siwoo because those odds are just so ridiculous every time.
Well, that's what people. I mean, like they'll say, well, guys play Fowler all the time, and to your point. Like the odds you get on Fowler, you're going to be negative when he finally hits. Whereas these 80 to 1 and longer guys, it's just part of your brand. I mean, you don't, if you top 5 them or top 10 them every once in a while, you make a little money back, and it's not a bad bet because you only have to throw a few percentage of your shares there, and you don't have to go big to get the return that you would on the top guys.
Yeah, like even with someone like List, who I bet every single week, I even bet him when he was like 20 to 1 at Shell and he missed the cut or whatever that was. That was pretty stupid. But he came top 5 at Heritage, he came top 5 at Honda, and he came top 5 at the Scottish, and like just cashing in on those. He was over 100 to 1 on each of those, so he paid like 30 to 1 on the each way. Like there hasn't been 30 events so far this season, so you end up on Luke List if you stick with these guys. And I think that's what we can find in value with the betting board this time around. Now, whether you can play the each way or not, that can go into it. But even if you're playing top 20 or top 10 bets, generally speaking, I feel like those tend to be the more profitable plays than picking outright winners, although it's far less fun.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, Punter, you hate top 5s, don't you? You're like Feinberg.
Yeah, like, Feinberg, it doesn't move the needle for us. We're big game hunting. We're trying to get that win. But I do appreciate like the way you do things because you have an approach and you stick to it. So there's something to be said for that too. But let's get back to the board and just talk about let me just throw out another couple of names real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah. That's why you're here. Throw them out.
Yeah. Well, we're up in the 150s, right? And we're kind of having fun. It's like, being in the candy store. So like I had checked off of Aaron Wise, and I see he's 3 under today at the WGC. At 150 to 1, he's won, right? And it's really like this thing could just be about catching lightning in a bottle. And it's like Jimmy Walker. The year Jimmy Walker won the PGA, like nobody was on him. Absolutely nobody I know had even mentioned his name. And the guy was like 25 under. I don't even remember. I'm kind of making that up. But nobody touched him. He ran away with the thing. I mean, in theory, that could totally happen with a Kevin Na or somebody totally out of left field, or maybe a Nick Watney if Mayo's dreams come true. But I mean, in reality, it's that kind of event where if somebody just completely puts everything together, they could sprint away from the field and go and hide.
I'm kind of with you on the problem with Wise is he came second at Wells Fargo, then he won at Byron Nelson, which the interesting corollary between this course and Byron Nelson, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, it has that like Zoysia fairway grass that they're trying to introduce to all these courses, so maybe you can just stick approaches off that, but he's missed every cut since.
Right, yeah, he was fantastic that week when I was there. I watched all of it, and the Zoysia fairways are getting popular in the South. Even I think Southern Hills up in Tulsa, which hosts some, I think they've gone to that as well. But it's a very nice grass to hit off of. And, it can make a guy comfortable if he's hitting fairways and he likes that grass. Obviously, he liked it there. A guy that, Punter said earlier that played well at Byron was Leishman. And this morning, Leishman was actually, I had him start at 80-1 on Bovada. I don't know if he's moved. I haven't bet him or anything. But, it's a narrative, I guess, as you guys say. And Wise is a talent guy that, he kind of reminds me of Woodland. I want to see what those guys do this week, because if they're coming back into form, they definitely can go show up and play next week.
Do you think that Wise talent-wise is better than Bo Hostler?
I think Bo's much closer to, in 2 years can be in that Spieth JT, not that big, but I mean, I think he can definitely be an elite top 10 guy. I don't know if I think Wise is more every once in a while will show up and pop up and win here or there. I don't think he can consistently dominate like maybe Bo can long term.
Like I said, I'm going to throw Nick Watney onto my card. I'll probably play that top 20 as well, first round leader, but I'll have my betting cheat sheet out next week. The final two guys that I just want to talk about because they're really generic. And maybe I'll even throw another American who has a similar style skill set into this. And Russ, I'll go to you first. Kisner, Zach Johnson, Brandt Snedeker. Did they do anything for you here?
Okay, so that's funny you mentioned those because, well, first of all, Snedeker, I'm out on him right now just because I think there's something mentally going on with him or physically. I'm not sure what it is. He's a guy who can flash for a round, but putting together 4 solid rounds in competition and being in the mix, we just haven't seen it in a while. So to me, if you're trying to get Snedeker on your card, you're trying to will him to win, you're trying to force that bet. That's a forced bet. Kisner, I had him written down here just because I think we have to give him serious consideration after what he did at the British. And he flashed here in the PGA last year. Remember last year? He was like leading the thing, right? So I think Kisner is somebody we have to seriously consider. Zach's sort of become a little bit of a part of my brand. I could see him competing here, but I wouldn't bet him at this particular juncture just because I think the length is going to be an issue for him. And I didn't like how he struggled in round 3 at Carnoustie. When I expected him to kind of step up and use his experience to push ahead, he kind of fell away. And I didn't like seeing that in contention.
Gup, what do you make of those 3 guys? And for the update, Leishman is now 66 on Bovada / Bodog.
So, yeah, none of them really appeal to me. Now, I will say one thing I'm working on and will be a part of my model next week is I'm going to bring in Ryder Cup bubble and FedEx bubble stuff to see who's flirting with both of those big things that are lingering out there. It'll definitely have an impact on my DraftKings strategy, like a Kisner. He's right there. DeChambeau's right there. And not that would influence me on betting necessarily, but I think it could be a narrative street of a little more focus on trying to get a win and securing their spot for the Ryder Cup this year.
I mean, I can definitely play into that too. So any final thoughts you want to make about your really first deep dive into the PGA card? Gup, we'll start with you.
No, I mean, the one bomb punt that I kind of have marked that I talked about him earlier just because he popped in my model is Lahiri. I know I'm kind of solo island there. I play him decent amount in DraftKings, and I don't know why I like him or why I play him, but I tend to. Outside of that, I just, I'm going to weigh in heavily this weekend some of the results and some of these guys that I have marked on what kind of form they're in coming into next week. Where's their mentality and the reshuffle of some of those Ryder Cup and stuff for the guys that are on the bubble, and factoring those in going into next week as well.
Yeah, Lahiri is 200-1 right now. How about you, Russ? Any final thoughts? And I'll throw a wager out to you, a winning wager. How long into Monday's show do you think it will take for Feinberg to bring up Ali Schneider-Jans?
I thought you were going to say how long before you yell at him for looking at his phone.
I had to take his phone away from him on the last show.
Well, listen, I don't know if I want to do that bet, but you and I may have to do a head-to-head between Jason Day and Francesco Molinari. So we'll take that on the side. We'll put that on the board. But, I just think, it's been a heck of a season to me, and I know for you, Pat, because you do so many shows, you're the king of content on here. But it's like you start to get to this point in the golf season, and we're sort of kind of getting a little tired, maybe a little burnt out on golf, and we're starting to ebb into the NFL season, which gets everybody really pumped up. So my point here is that I'm trying to take it easy. My approach to this week is a lot of what Gup just said. Let's not get completely overloaded with punts early on, which is going to force us into a bind. Let's take a slow approach to building the card. Let's see how this WGC shakes out. If you want to sprinkle on some of the longer shots right now, I don't have a problem with that. I don't foresee a ton of drift this time around, like we usually get it like Augusta or say a British. So I think the numbers that we see are kind of going to be the numbers that we see. So, but build your card slowly. Maybe take a couple of guys up top if you like them, and a couple of sprinkles down low, and then let's see how the week develops and see what the weather and the draw looks like.
Yeah, you meant the burnout that you mentioned. Like, I was really feeling it after the Open Championship. That's actually why I skipped the WGC in terms of content, went on vacation. I feel like I'm back, I'm fresh, I'm reinvigorated to really deep dive into the PGA Championship. And then it's just full throttle right into football. Before we go, though, got to mention this. Two things. One, the Tiger versus Phil showdown is happening in November for $10 million. Apparently, this is a real thing. So, Gup, do you have do you like this? Because I could see so much negative reaction towards it. Like, who cares? It's going to be fun. It's going to be golf in November.
No, the intriguing part is I hope, that course, Shadow Creek, I've been out there, is not a very friendly public court for a bunch of fans. So I'm hoping they use the opportunity and the exposure. Obviously, I hope charity's involved. To test out some exciting things to bring, because everybody will be watching it, non-golf people, like drones. I know Josh ADHD, he's mentioned that, some cool things that they could do on a course like that won't allow a lot of people to be around there. I hope they use the platform to build up the event and maybe even have some of the fellow golfers, being out there and helping grow the game that we all love to watch. And so that's the only thing I look out of it, is seeing what unique things whoever winds up putting it on, can bring to the, with the visualization for the non-casual golf. The casual golf fan.
Oh, Punter, do you know who's leading the Barracuda right now?
Don't even tell me if it's JJ Henry.
No, it is Ollie Schneider-Jans. Well, what do you make of this Tiger versus Phil thing? Like, should they add an extra wrinkle, like they have to put up their own $10 million, or like the guy that loses has to retire, like a wrestling type thing?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It would be a heck of a lot more intriguing if it was their own money, right? Listen, I don't go all in for the spectacle of things. This will be cool, I guess. I really don't have much to add on it. Gup had some good comments, but I don't understand. Like, they easily each have that kind of money. Like, let's. Phil wagers that kind of money on a normal practice round.
I'm just saying, I think the exposure thing is smart too. And if you can build up new technology, like I've been all over using these drones. It's all a part of my just long-term plan of taking over the either Golf Channel, somewhere to work with the PGA Tour, and then we can use drones and caddy cams that we can get on-demand live action on every single hole for every single player, but just to test out some new angles. But I think, Gup, you're right. Working some of the other players into this to give them exposure is really key. And now, knowing Tiger and Phil, they probably don't want to do that. And the other people who are your casuals who are tuning in don't want to see these other guys either. But this is the perfect time to try to brand some of these people, especially if Phil and Tiger play well at the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be coming off the heels of that. So you could have a 2-month stretch there where golf just in the middle of football season. And November is going to be you're coming in on college football playoffs. You're down the stretch in NFL, so they're going to be competing with some very hot times for football. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out.
All right, finally, Punter. Did you see the Phil Mickelson commercial?
You know what? I've been a little bit out of the loop. I have to check that out. So no, I haven't seen that yet.
Gup, have you seen it?
I did. I thought it was hilarious, and
so did I.
It was fun. It was funny. I thought it was great.
It's funny. It's funny because I still don't know. I still don't know what the name of the company is, and God, I would never buy one of those stupid shirts. But I will say that it was the first ad that everyone knows Phil in this long sleeve shirt that he keeps losing in whenever he ends up wearing it, although it is stretch fitting according to the commercial. Basically, Russ, it's just Phil dancing around like an idiot for the entire time, which is just fantastic. It's a nice shot at Phil, taking some of the lighter side of him to make people forget that he's a cheater on the course and he's cheating people with insider trading. It's a positive spin for him. But either way, he does this one leg kick, a roundhouse kick. Now, this is a man that suffers from arthritis, that it might be tough for him to get the leg up all that high. So I'm wondering if that was computer effects, Gup. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw some people commenting on it. I can't wait to hear either Feinberg or I'm sure it'll get brought up with it, Cuss sometime, but that'll be great commentary between those guys.
Well, I think that Cuss, he keeps saying he wants to do a cartwheel, and then he never ends up doing it. He should just do this dance instead.
Exactly. That'd be a bet. Make him dance off on it.
All right, before we get out of here, Russ, tell us all about what you have planned for us on the Twitter machine coming up, because you're always a lot of fun to follow during these majors.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the credit goes to you, Pat, for giving me a platform on here. I don't do this for a living. I'm not a pro blogger or what have you, but I get a kick out of interacting with people, and I've built up a decent following, and even for the British, I did a couple of periscopes, which that was new for me. I've usually kind of been the man behind the curtain, and not really putting myself out there. So yeah, we'll probably be tweeting out some pics, and if everybody gets into it, or if we've got some runners, maybe I'll do a periscope one of the nights while we're sucking down a few beers. And it's just all about, the camaraderie and the community that you've really helped build, and guys like Gup. So, I'm just happy to be a part of it, man.
All right, Gup, what can we expect from gupscorner.com for coverage for the PGA Championship? I know you guys have the live chats. You're going to be running weather models. Tell everyone all about it.
Yeah, Bucks will start us off Saturday. He's going to have his course preview out, which him and Kenny Kim are probably two of the best at that. Sunday, I think we're going to record the show and try to get it out. Now, one thing about majors, having early pricing allows us to analyze and get models and push that out. And then the next week we'll have our big, live chat Wednesday night. We've expanded the room to 200 seats, and the last major, it was full about 20 minutes before go time. So that's been exciting to get the community involved and get everybody in there giving feedback and talking out back and forth. It's a great platform. You can check it all out at gupscorner.com. And check us out at the Smash Factor podcast this week.
And don't be afraid to use Gup's affiliate link to get in on Fantasy National too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. FantasyNational.com/Gup. Definitely push that every week. It's vital to what we do. Moose has great work there, and we love using it.
All right, so you can become a member at FantasyNational.com right now and get access to all the tournament info, player-by-player stats. You can research almost anything you want on FantasyNational.com. Plus, you have all the tools. If you're going to enter the Millionaire Maker, or you're going to wager over $50, it's probably worth the $8 weekly investment to actually put some real research into this. And you can find your own picks, which is really the best part about it. No one's selling you picks on the site. It's just info. You do what you want with it and use the tools. Event simulator, ownership projections, lineup generator. It's all right there for you to use. I actually think the custom model and the mixed condition model go a really long way, and they've made me a lot better of a player, and they're super easy to use. You can find all the tutorials up on the site as well. But that'll do it. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where the betting cheat sheet will be on Wednesday afternoon after the live chat at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the DraftKings YouTube channel, all at the PME. Plus, Monday with Feinberg, Tuesday with two special guests to recap all the ownership, weather, tee times, and finalize our picks for the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. And go back to Thursday's show, and hey, go watch Leone, go watch Raza. We break down all the tiers of the pricing as well and break down the course just a little bit. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy your weekends. We'll see you Monday, and I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!